Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone see you're not perfect, and trust they'll choose you anyway. The rain was coming down hard that Thursday afternoon, turning the busy city streets into rivers of umbrellas and rushing people. David sat in his favorite corner of the coffee shop, the same spot he'd claimed every day for the past 6 months. His laptop screen glowed as he worked on another logo design for a small business downtown. The familiar sounds of the coffee machine, hissing and customers chatting created the perfect background noise for his work. David liked routines. Same coffee shop, same table, same order. A medium coffee with just a splash of cream. His friends always teased him about being too predictable, but he found comfort in knowing what to expect. Life was simpler that way, less complicated. The bell above the door chimed and he glanced up briefly from his screen. A woman walked in, shaking droplets from her long, dark hair. She wore a simple blue jacket and carried a canvas bag over her shoulder. David had seen her before. She came in maybe twice a week, usually ordered tea, and always sat near the window. He'd noticed her because she had an interesting way of observing people, like she was studying them for some invisible art project. Today felt different, though. Instead of heading to her usual spot by the window, she walked directly toward his table. David's fingers paused over his keyboard as she approached. She moved with purpose, like someone who had made up their mind about something important. "Mind if I sit?" she asked, but she was already pulling out the chair across from him before he could answer. Her voice was soft but confident, the kind of voice that made you lean in to listen. Sure," David managed, completely caught off guard. In all his months of coming here, no stranger had ever just sat down at his table. He quickly minimized his work screen, unsure of what was happening. She settled into the chair and looked directly at him with these incredibly bright green eyes. There was something almost playful in her expression, like she was holding on to a secret that amused her. She placed her hands flat on the small wooden table between them and tilted her head slightly. "I've been watching you," she said simply. David felt his cheeks warm up. "Watching me? Why?" The question came out more curious than alarmed. There was something about her manner that didn't feel threatening at all. If anything, it felt like the beginning of an adventure he hadn't signed up for. "You come here every day at exactly 3:30. You always order the same thing. You always sit in this exact spot." She gestured around them. "You work on your laptop for exactly 2 hours, then you pack up and leave. You're like clockwork." David realized she was right. He had no idea his routine was so obvious to others. "Is that bad?" She laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that made other people in the coffee shop turn to look. Not because it was loud, but because it sounded so genuinely happy. "Not bad at all, just interesting. I started wondering what kind of person needs that much structure in their day." "And what did you decide?" David asked, surprising himself with his boldness. Usually, conversations with strangers made him uncomfortable, but something about her put him at ease. "I decided," she said, leaning forward slightly, "that you're someone who's been playing it safe for so long. You've forgotten what it feels like to be surprised." Before David could respond, she reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were warm despite the cold rain outside. The simple touch sent an unexpected jolt through his entire arm. She didn't grab his hand roughly or pull hard. Instead, she applied just enough gentle pressure to guide him forward, making him lean across the small table toward her. Their faces were suddenly much closer, close enough that he could see tiny flecks of gold in her green eyes, close enough to catch a hint of her perfume, something light and floral that made him think of spring mornings. "What are you doing?" he whispered, though he made no move to pull away. Her smile grew wider, and there was something almost mischievous about it. It wasn't the smile of someone who was unsure or nervous. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what they wanted and wasn't afraid to go after it. The smile of someone who had already imagined how this story might end. "I'm giving you a chance to surprise yourself," she said quietly. The coffee shop seemed to fade away around them. The conversations of other customers became background noise. The rain against the windows turned into a gentle rhythm. All David could focus on was this mysterious woman who had walked into his perfectly ordered day and turned everything upside down with a simple touch. "I don't even know your name," he said, still leaning forward, still letting her hold his hand. "Names come later," she replied. "First, I want to know if you're brave enough to say yes to something without knowing what it is." David's logical mind was screaming at him that this was crazy. He didn't do spontaneous things. He didn't let strangers hold his hand in coffee shops. He definitely didn't make decisions without knowing all the facts first. But looking into her eyes, feeling the warmth of her touch, he found himself wanting to be the kind of person who could say yes to mystery. "What exactly am I saying yes to?" he asked. She squeezed his hand gently, and her smile became softer, more genuine. "To possibility, to letting someone surprise you, to maybe discovering that your perfectly planned life has room for something unplanned." The moment stretched between them like a bridge David could either cross or walk away from. His heart was beating faster than it had in months. When was the last time he'd felt this alive, this present in a single moment? "Okay," he heard himself say. "Yes." Her smile became radiant, like he'd just given her the best possible gift. She slowly released his hand but didn't lean back. Instead, she pulled a small piece of folded paper from her jacket pocket and placed it on the table between them. "Tomorrow, same time, but not here." She stood up gracefully. "If you're really ready for something different, you'll figure out where." And just like that, she walked toward the door, leaving David sitting alone at his table with a folded piece of paper and a mind full of questions. He watched through the window as she disappeared into the crowd of people with umbrellas, becoming just another figure in the rain. David sat there for a long time, staring at the paper, afraid to open it, and afraid not to. His coffee had gone, cold. His laptop had gone to sleep, and for the first time in 6 months he had completely forgotten about his carefully planned schedule. Everything had changed in the span of 5 minutes. David stared at the folded paper for what felt like hours after she left. His hands were actually shaking a little as he finally opened it. Inside, written in neat handwriting, was a simple riddle. "Where silent stories hang on walls, and visitors whisper in marble halls, find the room where colors dance and maybe you'll get a second chance." He read it 3 times before it clicked. The art museum downtown. She wanted him to meet her at the art museum. That night, David couldn't sleep. He kept replaying their conversation, the way her hand felt in his, the confidence in her smile. His sensible side kept telling him this was ridiculous. He didn't even know her name. She could be anyone. But every time he decided to forget the whole thing, he'd remember the way she looked at him, like she could see something in him that he couldn't see himself. The next day dragged by slower than any day in recent memory. David tried to focus on his work, but he kept checking the clock. At 2:30, a full hour early, he gave up pretending to be productive and headed to the museum. The building was impressive, with its tall columns and wide steps leading to the entrance. David had lived in the city for 5 years but had never actually been inside. He bought a ticket and wandered through the halls, feeling completely out of place among the art lovers and tourists. He found himself in a room full of colorful paintings, abstract pieces that seemed to move and flow even though they were perfectly still. And there she was, standing in front of a large canvas covered in swirls of blue and gold, like she'd been waiting there all day. "You came?" she said without turning around. "I almost didn't," David admitted, walking up to stand beside her. "What, changed your mind?" David thought about it. "Curiosity, I guess. And maybe you were right about me playing it too safe." She finally turned to look at him, and that same mysterious smile was back. "Good. Because this is just the beginning." She pulled another folded paper from her purse and handed it to him. "Tomorrow's clue. Don't open it until you get home tonight." "Wait," David said as she started to walk away. "Can I at least know your name?" She paused and looked back over her shoulder. "Call me Luna." Over the next week, David's entire routine crumbled. Luna led him on a treasure hunt across the city, each day bringing a new clue and a new location. Tuesday took him to a small bookstore in the old part of town, where he found a mystery novel with certain words highlighted. When he read them in order, they formed a message. The best stories happen to those brave enough to turn the page. Clue led him to the Central Park where he discovered Luna sitting on a bench feeding ducks. She didn't say much that day, just handed him a small origami crane made from newspaper and walked away. Inside the crane, he found Thursday's location. Thursday brought him to a rooftop restaurant he never knew existed. Luna was already there, sitting at a table with 2 cups of coffee. For the first time, they actually had a real conversation. She told him she was an art teacher at a local elementary school. She loved old movies and rainy days. She had a scar on her left wrist from falling off her bike when she was 7. "Why are you doing all this?" David asked as they watched the sunset over the city skyline. "Because life is short," Luna said simply, "and most people spend it waiting for permission to be happy. And you don't?" "I used to. I spent years waiting for the right moment, the right person, the right circumstances. Then I realized that the right moment is usually right now." David felt something shift inside him as she spoke. When was the last time he had done something just because it made him happy? When had he stopped taking risks? Friday's clue was different. Instead of a riddle, it was just an address and a time. David arrived at the location to find a small jazz club tucked between a bakery and a flower shop. The music was soft and intimate, the kind of place where people went to disappear from the world for a few hours. Luna was sitting at a corner table, wearing a simple black dress that made her green eyes look even brighter. For the first time since this whole adventure began, she looked nervous. "I wasn't sure you'd come to this one," she said as he sat down. "Why wouldn't I?" "Because this isn't part of the game anymore. This is just me asking you to spend an evening with me because I enjoy your company." They talked for hours that night, really talked. David learned that Luna had moved to the city 2 years ago from a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. She'd always felt like an outsider there, too curious about the world beyond the town limits. The city gave her freedom to be herself, but sometimes the anonymity felt lonely. David found himself sharing things he rarely talked about with anyone. His fear of taking risks came from watching his father lose everything on a business venture when David was 12. His need for routine was really a need for security, for knowing that tomorrow would be predictable and safe. "But safe isn't always living," Luna said gently. "Sometimes safe is just surviving." As the evening wound down, David realized something had changed in him over the past week. He'd started looking forward to the unknown instead of dreading it. He'd begun to see his city through different eyes, noticing things he'd walked past 1,000 times before. When they parted ways that night, Luna didn't give him another clue. Instead, she squeezed his hand and said, "Same time tomorrow. You pick the place." For the first time in the game, David was the one making the choice, and for the first time in years he was excited about the uncertainty of what would happen next. But Saturday came and went, and Luna never showed up to the quiet cafe David had chosen. He waited for 3 hours, checking his phone, wondering if he'd misunderstood. Sunday passed the same way. By Monday, David was beginning to worry that the game was over and he had no way to find her. 3 days passed without any sign of Luna. David found himself returning to all the places they'd visited together, hoping to catch a glimpse of her dark hair or hear that familiar laugh. The art museum felt empty without her standing in front of the colorful paintings. The park bench where she'd fed the ducks seemed lonely and forgotten. By Wednesday, David was genuinely worried. Had something happened to her? Had he said something wrong that night at the jazz club? The uncertainty was driving him crazy in a way that his old routine never had. He decided to retrace their steps more carefully, looking for clues he might have missed. At the bookstore, he struck up a conversation with the elderly owner, describing Luna and asking if she'd been in recently. "Oh, the young lady with the green eyes," the man said, nodding. "She comes in here quite often, actually. Has for months, always looking at books about travel and adventure. She mentioned once that she was planning something special for someone." "Planning something special?" She said she was trying to show someone that life could be an adventure if they were brave enough to take the first step. David's heart skipped. She had been planning their week of adventures for months, long before she'd ever spoken to him in the coffee shop. At the coffee shop, David approached the barista who worked the afternoon shift. The woman with dark hair who comes in sometimes. Have you seen her lately? The barista, a college student named Tim, looked up from wiping down the counter. Luna? No, not for a few days, but she used to ask about you all the time. Ask about me? Yeah, for months. She'd come in and order tea, but she'd always ask about the guy who sits in the corner with his laptop. She seemed really interested in your routine, what time you came in, what you ordered, stuff like that. David felt a mix of emotions. She had been watching him for months, studying him, planning their adventure. But why had she disappeared just when things were getting real between them? That afternoon, David made a decision that would have terrified his old self. He went to the elementary school where Luna taught. The building was bright and cheerful, with children's artwork covering the hallways and the sound of young voices echoing from classrooms. At the main office, he asked to speak with Luna. The secretary, a kind woman in her 50s, looked at him with concern. I'm sorry, but Luna hasn't been in this week. She called in sick on Monday and hasn't been back since. We've been trying to reach her, but she's not answering her phone. David's worry deepened. This wasn't like the Luna he'd gotten to know. Even in their short time together, she'd seemed like someone who was responsible, someone who cared about her students. Do you have her address? David asked. I'm a friend, and I'm concerned about her too. The secretary hesitated, then wrote down an address on a slip of paper. She lives in the apartments on Maple Street, Unit 3B. The building was older but well-maintained, with a small garden in front and large windows that let in plenty of light. David climbed the stairs to the third floor, his heart pounding with each step. He knocked gently on the door marked 3B. After a long moment, he heard footsteps. The door opened just a crack, revealing one green eye. David? What are you doing here? You didn't show up. I was worried. The door opened wider, and David could see Luna properly. She looked tired, paler than usual, with dark circles under her eyes. You shouldn't have come, she said, but she stepped aside to let him in. The apartment was small but cozy, filled with books and art supplies. Half-packed boxes sat in corners, and David noticed that many of the personal items had already been taken down from the walls. Are you moving? He asked. Luna sat down heavily on her couch, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked defeated. I'm going back home, to my parents. Why? I thought you loved the city. I do. Luna was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. David, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you from the beginning. David sat down across from her, sensing that whatever she was about to say was going to change everything. I'm sick, she said quietly. Not like a cold or the flu. I have something called lupus. It's a condition that affects my immune system. Some days I feel completely normal, like I could conquer the world. Other days I can barely get out of bed. David felt his world shift slightly, the way it had that first day in the coffee shop, but for different reasons now. I've been having a bad week, Luna continued. That's why I didn't come to meet you. I spent 3 days in bed, too exhausted to move, too tired to even call and explain. Why didn't you tell me? Luna looked up at him with tears in her eyes. Because I wanted to be the girl who pulled you into adventure, not the girl who needs to be taken care of. I wanted you to see me as strong and mysterious, not sick and complicated. David felt a dozen different emotions at once. Concern for her health, anger that she hadn't trusted him with the truth, and underneath it all, a deep tenderness for this brave woman who had tried to give him the gift of adventure, even while dealing with her own challenges. The whole game, the mystery, all of it, David said. You did that because you thought I wouldn't be interested in the real you? I wanted to show you the best version of myself before you had to see the worst. Luna wiped her eyes. My condition is unpredictable. I never know when I'm going to have a flare-up. I can't make promises about tomorrow because I don't know what tomorrow will bring. So your solution is to disappear. My solution is to go back home where my family can help take care of me, and where I won't drag anyone else into this mess." David stood up and began pacing around the small living room, trying to process everything she'd told him. The woman, who had seemed so confident, so in control of everything, had been fighting a battle he knew nothing about. "Luna," he said finally, "did it ever occur to you that maybe I'm strong enough to handle the truth?" Luna looked at David with surprise when he asked if she thought he was strong enough to handle the truth. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. "It's not about your strength," Luna said. "Finally, it's about mine. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm not weak, not broken. When I met you, I wanted to be the girl who could sweep you off your feet, not the one who might need help getting out of bed some mornings." David stopped pacing and sat back down, this time on the couch next to her instead of across from her. "What if I told you that the girl who's been showing me adventure all week is the same girl sitting here right now, sick days and all?" "You don't understand," Luna said, shaking her head. "This isn't just about bad days. Sometimes I have to cancel plans at the last minute. Sometimes I'm too tired to leave the house for weeks. Sometimes I need help with simple things like grocery shopping or cleaning. It's not fair to ask someone to sign up for that." "But you're not asking me to sign up for anything," David pointed out. "You're making the decision for both of us. Don't I get a say in what I can handle?" Luna was quiet for a long time, staring at the half-packed boxes around them. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared of being a burden. I'm scared of watching someone I care about get tired of dealing with my problems. I'm scared of being left when things get really hard." David felt his heart break a little for this woman who had seemed so fearless just days ago. "Luna, can I tell you something? Before I met you, I hadn't felt truly alive in years. I went through the same routine every single day because it felt safe. But safe was really just another word for empty." He turned to face her fully. "You've shown me what it feels like to be excited about tomorrow again. You've made me braver, more curious, more willing to take chances. Do you really think I'm going to walk away from that because some days are harder than others?" "You say that now," Luna said. "But you don't know what it's really like." "Then show me," David said simply. "Don't run away. Don't make the choice for me. Show me what your real life looks like, good days and bad days, and let me decide if I'm strong enough to be part of it." Luna looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. "You really mean that?" "I've never meant anything more in my life." But instead of answering, Luna stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street below. "I think you should leave, David. Go back to your normal life. Find someone who can give you the adventure you're looking for without all the complications." David felt like she'd slapped him. After everything they'd shared, after the connection he thought they'd built, she was still trying to push him away. He stood up, his own frustration finally bubbling over. "Fine," he said. "If that's what you really want, I'll go. But I'm not going back to my old life. You've changed me too much for that." He walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "And Luna, when you're ready to stop being scared and start trusting that someone might actually choose you, complications. And all you know where to find me." David left the apartment feeling angry and heartbroken and confused all at the same time. Part of him wanted to march right back up there and fight harder for her, but another part of him understood that Luna needed to make her own choice about whether she was brave enough to let him in. For the next 3 days, David threw himself into his work with an intensity that surprised him. But he wasn't going back to his old routine. Instead of sitting in the coffee shop, he worked from his apartment. Instead of ordering the same lunch every day, he tried new restaurants. Instead of taking the same route to meetings, he explored different parts of the city. Luna had been right about one thing. He had been playing it safe for too long. But she was wrong about something else. He wasn't looking for adventure for its own sake. He was looking for a life that felt meaningful, and she had become part of what made his life feel meaningful. On Thursday evening, David made a decision. If Luna thought he would give up that easily, she didn't know him as well as she thought she did. He went back to the art museum where their adventure had really begun. He stood in front of the same colorful painting where he'd found her that first day, remembering how nervous and excited he'd felt. Then he pulled out his phone and took a picture of himself next to the painting. He posted it online with a simple message. Some adventures are worth fighting for. Friday took him back to the bookstore. He bought the same mystery novel Luna had left for him, the one with the highlighted words. But this time he highlighted different words, creating his own message. He left the book with the owner, along with a note asking him to give it to Luna if she came in. Saturday found him at the park with a bag of breadcrumbs feeding the ducks just like Luna had done. But he also brought a small wooden box. Inside, he placed a key to his apartment and a note that read, "For the days when you need a safe place to land." He left the box on the bench where they'd sat together, hoping she would find it. Hoping she would understand what he was trying to tell her. Sunday evening, David went to the jazz club where they'd had their deepest conversation. He ordered 2 cups of coffee and sat at their corner table, waiting. He wasn't sure if she would come, but he knew he had to try one more time. As the hours passed and the club began to empty out, David started to think he'd made a mistake. Maybe Luna really did want him to leave her alone. Maybe he'd misread everything between them. But just as he was about to give up and go home, he saw a familiar figure in the doorway. Luna stood there looking uncertain, like she wasn't sure if she should come in or run away again. Their eyes met across the dimly lit room, and David felt his heart skip just like it had that first day in the coffee shop. Luna took a deep breath and began walking toward his table. Luna walked slowly toward David's table, her hands nervously fidgeting with the strap of her purse. When she reached him, she didn't sit down right away. Instead, she stood there looking at the 2 cups of coffee he'd ordered, one of which had long since gone cold. "You've been leaving me breadcrumbs," she said quietly. "I learned from the best," David replied, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Luna sat down carefully, like she was afraid sudden movements might break whatever fragile moment they were sharing. "I found the book at the bookstore, and the box in the park, and I realized that you've been trying to show me the same thing I was trying to show you, that sometimes you have to take a leap of faith." David leaned forward slightly. "I've had 3 days to think about everything. You told me about your condition, about your fears, about why you've been pushing me away. What did you decide?" "I decided that you're the bravest person I've ever met," David said. "You've been dealing with something really difficult, and instead of hiding away from the world, you chose to create magic for someone else. You turned your own fear into an adventure for me." Luna's eyes filled with tears. "David, you don't understand what you'd be signing up for. Some days I can barely function. I have doctor appointments and medical bills and medications that make me feel worse before they make me feel better. I can't promise you the kind of relationship where we can make plans and stick to them. Can I tell you something?" David said. "Before I met you, I had a perfectly predictable life. I knew exactly what every day would bring, and I was miserable. I was so busy avoiding uncertainty that I forgot to actually live." He reached across the table and gently took her hand, just like she had done to him that first day in the coffee shop. "You've taught me that the best things in life are usually unexpected. So why would I be afraid of a relationship that's unexpected too? But what if I get sicker? What if there are days when I need help with everything? What if you wake up one morning and realize this is too hard?" David squeezed her hand. "What if you don't get sicker? What if the good days outnumber the bad ones? What if I wake up every morning grateful that you trusted me enough to let me be part of your life?" He paused. "You're asking me to promise that things will never be difficult. I can't do that, but I can promise that I won't run away when they are." Luna was crying now, but she was also smiling. "I'm so scared, David." "I know. But can I tell you a secret? I'm scared too. I'm scared of caring about someone this much. I'm scared of opening my heart to something I can't control. But I'm more scared of losing you because we were both too afraid to try." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, holding hands across the small table while the jazz music played softly in the background. Finally, Luna spoke. "I've been packing to move back home. My parents think I can't take care of myself here. What do you think?" "I think I've been taking care of myself just fine. But I also think it might be nice to let someone help sometimes." She looked up at him. If you're really sure about this, there are things you need to know. About my medical routine, about warning signs to watch for, about what to do when I'm having a flare-up. I want to know all of it, David said without hesitation. And there are things I need to know too. Like what you need from me on my good days. Like how to make sure I'm giving back as much as I'm asking for. David smiled. I think we can figure it out together. Over the next hour, they talked more honestly than they ever had before. Luna explained her condition in detail. The fatigue, the joint pain, the way stress could trigger symptoms. She told him about the medications she took, the specialists she saw, the lifestyle changes she'd had to make. David told her about his own fears, his worry that he wouldn't know how to help when she needed it, his concern that his inexperience with serious illness would make him say or do the wrong things. But he also told her about his excitement at the prospect of building something real with her, challenges and all. So what happens now? Luna asked as the jazz club began to close around them. Now we start over, David said. But this time, we do it without games or mysteries, just two people who care about each other figuring out how to make it work. I'd like that, Luna said. But I have one request. Anything. Don't let me use my condition as an excuse to stop having adventures, even if they have to be smaller adventures sometimes. Even if we have to plan them around doctor appointments and bad days. I don't want to go back to playing it safe. Deal, David said. But I have a request, too. What's that? Next time you're having a bad week, don't disappear. Call me. Let me bring you soup or just sit with you while you rest. Let me be part of the hard days, too. Luna nodded, tears streaming down her face again. I can try to do that. That's all I ask. 6 months. Later, David and Luna were back in the same coffee shop where everything had started. But this time they were sharing the corner table, both working on their laptops while they enjoyed their afternoon coffee. It hadn't been easy. Luna had bad weeks where David learned to navigate the delicate balance between being helpful and being overwhelming. David had moments of worry and frustration when he felt helpless in the face of her illness. But they'd also had incredible days, spontaneous trips to new parts of the city, cozy evenings at home watching old movies, quiet moments where they marveled at how lucky they were to have found each other. I have something for you, Luna said, closing her laptop and reaching into her bag. It's not even my birthday, David said, but he was smiling. It's the anniversary of the day I grabbed your hand and changed both our lives. She pulled out a small wrapped box. Inside was a simple silver bracelet with a small charm attached. The charm was shaped like a paper airplane. For all the adventures we've had, Luna said, and all the ones still to come. David fastened the bracelet around his wrist, then reached across the table and took Luna's hand just like she had done to him in this same spot 6 months ago. Ready for the next adventure? He asked. Luna squeezed his hand and gave him that same mysterious smile that had started everything. But now he knew the secret behind it. It wasn't the smile of someone who already owned his heart. It was the smile of someone who was brave enough to keep choosing love, one day at a time. Always, she said. And this time David knew that whatever came next, they would face it together.